Hello there, this is Neophyte from SUNY Fredonia. In this video I'm going to talk a little bit about the concept of abortion very briefly and some arguments for and against the wrongness of abortion, and I'm going to focus on two of them. And if you're one of my students in my Phil 258 class, then this is going to be sort of at the end a review and summary of the debate over the morality of abortion, and it's going to supplement the reading for this week and be on top of those four much shorter videos, five much shorter videos that I made available for you by philosopher Nathan Nobis. Okay, we might think of abortion as the intentional termination of a pregnancy by the removal of the fetus, kind of a common conception of abortion, the only way to end or terminate a pregnancy, given the current state of medical technology, involves the death of the fetus, which is why Nobis defines it in terms of the intentional killing of the fetus to end the pregnancy. And in biology, embryology, people are going to make finer distinctions, but in philosophy we typically think of a fetus as the stage of a human life between conception or fertilization and birth. So conception or fertilization, where the sperm and egg get together and form a zygote or conceptus, and then usually embryologists will say from 2 weeks to 8 weeks is the embryonic stage. There we have an embryo, and then they might not label it a fetus until 8 weeks, until it's born. But anyway, we're gonna talk about a fetus. We're gonna use the word fetus the whole way through. And this is quite common in the philosophical literature. Okay, here's Nobis's definition. An abortion is the intentional killing of a fetus to end a pregnancy. Whether we might quibble over that definition, especially talking about means and ends and things, as we were with Kant a little bit, but it's not going to matter much at all exactly which definition, how we define the concept of abortion. Okay, but biological facts are facts. A fetus is a living being, right? It's living. It's biologically alive, and it's its own organism. It is within the pregnant woman, the womb. It occupies this sort of niche in the womb, but it's a living being, and an abortion does cause it to die. Which, of course, is one main reason why abortion is such a controversial issue. Okay, and this matters because there are about 1 million legal abortions performed each year. My data here are a little bit old, but I'm thinking things are pretty much the same these days. So that equals about 2% of women of roughly childbearing age, and abortion is one of the most common surgical procedures in the United States. So this is definitely a pressing practical issue. If it's wrong, there's a lot of serious wrongdoing going on. If it's not wrong, not. So you, if you're one of my students, have you've looked at some videos about I think one of them was a helpful review about begging the question and some notions about argumentation, some conceptual stuff, and then I think a good review of some question begging and common sense kind of arguing. I'm going to focus on the more meaty philosophical arguments, okay? And I'm going to look at several arguments over the course of this video. But especially if you're one of my students, I'm going to focus and have you focus on what I'm going to call the valuable futures argument and what I'm going to call the no rights to the woman's body argument. And I'll say more about that as we go along. Okay. If you did the reading and listened and watched those other videos, this will be clear to you. But in philosophy, we call an action prima facie wrong when there's a moral reason not to do it, but the reason can be outweighed by other moral reasons. Okay, so it might be prima facie wrong to lie, but in certain circumstances, other moral reasons might outweigh this prima facie wrongness. Okay, so if there's no outweighing reason, then the action is just plain wrong. So if there's no good reason to lie, then lying is wrong. But if there is such a reason, maybe saving someone's life or protecting someone from an evildoer, then the action is or may be just plain right. Okay, So an action could be just plain right, even if it's prima facie wrong. Lying to save someone's life might be an example of that. If this is confusing to you, I strongly encourage you to pause the video and reflect on this. But you could think of being prima facie wrong as having a feature that would tend to make the action wrong in the absence of other morally relevant considerations. But if there are other morally relevant considerations, we have to kind of figure out how they weigh against each other. Okay, so here's a human being's argument, and Nobis discusses this in the video, and oh, by the way, this also accompanies this reading, The Ethics of Abortion. This is maybe the section 1 stuff. I'm gonna be really quick here because you've already watched a video on this. I want to keep this to well under an hour. So the idea here is that fetuses are human beings. They're biologically human. They are their own organisms. What else would they be? And if something is a human being, it's prima facie wrong to kill them. I'm a human being. Certainly, there's a very strong reason against killing me. So therefore, abortion is prima facie wrong. It's a valid argument. Okay, given the concept of abortion, okay, which involves the death of the fetus, whether that's the intended effect or not. Given the concept of abortion, it's a valid argument, and premise 1 seems true. Fetuses are human beings. Now, some people say, oh, they're not human, but premise 1 does seem true. Probably the best premise to object to for someone who thinks that abortion is permissible is premise 2. And you might say, okay, well, the reasoning for premise 2 has us focus on beings like us, right? Beings that are already adults and have a full-blown personality and self-concept and self-consciousness and so on. But maybe that is sort of misleading, okay? There's lots of other human beings out there, and some of them are just whatever, like a massive clump of cells with very little or almost no differentiation into different organs and stuff. These fetuses, these embryos, really. Why think that fetuses or embryos have a quality that makes it prima facie wrong to kill them, just because we ourselves, adult human beings, have this quality? Okay, so the misleading focus on human beings like us might be a way for pro-choicers to criticize this argument by saying that premise 2 is false. Okay, instead of human beings here, we might just replace that with persons, okay? And as I hope you kind of remember from those other videos, in philosophy we often have sort of a psychologically loaded concept of a person. A person is not just a biological person. A person has to have a personality, right? Certain psychological capacities involving self-consciousness, having a self-concept, acting on the basis of reasons, and whatever you build into that, okay? As a result, even though premise 2 is true here, if something is really a person, then it's prima facie wrong. By the way, there could be non-human persons on this concept, right? If an alien of some sort really has a self-concept and rationality and stuff, we might call them a person, but even though they're not a human being. In this case, the pro-choice response is that premise 1 sort of is not true, right? Fetuses are not persons in this psychological way that would have to be the case to make premise 2 true, to make it prima facie wrong to kill them. Okay, so, and by the way, that argument is also discussed in section 2 of this 1,000-word philosophy article. Okay, I would like to build up to what I'm going to call the valuable futures argument, and it is due to the work of the philosopher Don Marquis. There's a picture of him. He published a paper in 1992, I think it was, Why Abortion is Immoral, and the idea, those two arguments that I just showed you about human beings and persons, the idea is, according to Marquis, they're not going to convince anyone who doesn't already accept their conclusions, right? And his line of thinking is, if we want to get an argument, and he does think that abortion is immoral, so if we want to get an argument with any chance of success, convincing someone who doesn't already agree with the conclusion, we first have to ask, why is it wrong to kill us? And the idea is, if if what makes it wrong to kill us is not present in the case of killing a fetus, then this would suggest that abortion is not wrong. But if what makes it wrong to kill us is present, this would suggest that abortion is wrong. And he's going to argue that what makes it wrong to kill us is essentially that it deprives us of all the value of our future, and that this is present in the case of abortion, killing a fetus, and hence abortion is morally wrong. By the way, I had a nice dinner with Don Marquis. There I am. He's to the left. I'm the second to the left. This guy here is also a SUNY Fredonia philosophy professor. This guy here, he's from some Pennsylvania place, Kutztown University. Hey, John. So here's just a headline, right? After teen girl is killed in her sleep by stray bullet, Atlanta police seek leads. And this sort of connects back with our Epicurus argument about the evil of death, the badness of death, right? Whoever killed this girl, even if it was, unintentional or accidental, harmed her greatly. Okay? Even though she was sleeping, she might never have felt any pain. Okay? Why? Well, a very natural answer is she didn't get to live out the rest of her life. She missed out. She was deprived of all of the value that was in store for her had she continued to live. Okay? And that's Marquis's main idea here. By the way, if you're in my class, think back to what we call the deprivation account, or the deprivation approach. Okay? The idea is that death, or anything else for that matter, is not bad for you simply because it causes you pain or something. It's bad for you because it makes you worse off than you would have been had it not happened. Had death not happened, you would have continued to live and be well off. Okay, so according to Marquis, killing an individual is prima facie seriously wrong. In other words, there's very strong reason not to kill when doing so would deprive that individual of a valuable future. Okay, and he calls this a future like ours, our future filled with, it's a bad time if you're watching this in early 2020. We have a pandemic going on, but we have at least reason to believe that things are going to get better. Of course, a lot of people are dying, and but that we do, and I hope everyone watching this video has a valuable future in store. And killing takes that away from someone, prima facie seriously wrong. By the way, if you're one of my students, a valuable future, Marquis says, is a future filled with activities and projects and enjoyments that are either good in themselves or needed as a means for what's good in themselves. This has to do with what we call well-being, right? Happiness, getting what you want, meaningful relationships, whatever you think makes for a valuable future. That's what is involved here. Okay, his view is neutral about exactly what that amounts to. Okay. By seriously wrong, Marquis means that it's at least as serious as killing an innocent adult. You need some pretty strong reason to kill an innocent adult. Maybe it's like to save 5 other lives in a trolley problem type of example, or if the person is attacking you, and you're doing it in self-defense. Okay. So again, note our connections to well-being, the valuable future, and the deprivation account of, as we talked about it, extrinsic badness earlier in the semester. Very much along those lines. It's kind of another way of saying the same thing. Okay, so we're about to take a look at Marquis's argument. It's not a religious argument, so this is kind of important. Nothing to do with religion at all here. There's no assumption that the fetus is a person. Of course, there's no necessary denial that the fetus is a person. So this is why Marquis thinks that his argument is a lot more likely to convince an open-minded person who might not already agree that abortion is immoral. And, this argument is discussed briefly in the valuable futures section of the reading here, and in the video, what was it, the 4th video in his 5-part series. He's got pretty much, his first premise is fetuses have valuable futures. Okay. Okay. So let's call this the valuable futures argument. And I think on the final exam I'm going to ask you to find this argument. Okay. Instead of saying fetuses have valuable futures, let's just say fetuses would have valuable futures. And the idea is that unless they're aborted, fetuses will have valuable futures in store for them. And we're talking here about, I hate to use the word normal maybe, but normal fetuses that are not severely diseased or disabled in such a way that it would make life, in some sense, not worth living. Okay, and if something would have a valuable future, it's prima facie wrong to kill them. By the way, the explanation for premise 2 comes from Marquis's account of the wrongness of killing. Killing an individual is seriously prima facie wrong when doing so would deprive it of a valuable future. So premise 2 seems right, given that account. If something would have a valuable future, it's prima facie wrong to kill them. I challenge you, viewer, to think about an account of the wrongness of killing. If you don't like this, that's better than this one. What makes killing wrong here is the fact that it's a great harm to the individual who's killed, and what that boils down to is it takes away the value of the victim's future. Prevents them or deprives them from living out that future. Okay, again here, like those other arguments, the conclusion is that abortion is prima facie wrong. So even if this argument is successful, it shows that abortion is prima facie wrong, but not just plain wrong. It's consistent with the conclusion here that there be abortions which are just plain right, or all things considered, philosophers often say, even though they're prima facie wrong. But think about it. What reasons could outweigh killing me or you? You're going to need pretty strong justification for killing a fetus if abortion is prima facie wrong. In other words, you're going to need reasons to have an abortion that are sort of just as important as a reason that you would need to kill an innocent adult. In fact, a fetus has an even longer future in store for them than an adult. Okay. So if you disagree with this conclusion, I strongly urge you to kind of think about what might be wrong or mistaken about this argument. Okay, I have this note here. The conclusion shows that abortion is only prima facie wrong, and I'll just follow up on that for just another second. We could extend Marquis's argument. So there's that conclusion, line 3, abortion is prima facie wrong, and we might say, well, if it's prima facie wrong, then the overwhelming majority of abortions are just plain morally wrong. Not just prima facie, but absolutely, all things considered, morally wrong. So therefore, the overwhelming majority are wrong. And Marquis would explain premise 4 here by saying that the prima facie serious moral wrongness of abortion makes killing a fetus just as serious as killing an innocent adult. And in the vast overwhelming majority of abortions, there's simply no moral reasons or considerations that are strong enough, weighty enough to override the wrongness of taking someone's life away. Okay, I'm going to come back to this point later on, but think about how the reasons that you would need to permissibly kill an adult human. It would have to be, self-defense, where your very life is at stake, or so Marquis is going to be okay with having an abortion to save the life of the pregnant woman, but these situations are rare indeed. So the overwhelming majority would be just plain wrong. Okay, in the video that you watched, Nobis has some commentary here, and I'm not going to say much about it just because I'm going on too long as it is. But premise 1 says of Marquis, of the valuable futures argument, says that fetuses have or would have valuable futures, and he says, well, maybe not. There's no psychological connection from a preconscious fetus to an experienced future. So the idea is that a fetus is just not in a position to have any expectations or hopes for its future. So there's no connection between the way it is now and the future it's going to have. I'm not so sure that that's relevant, but if we kill someone who's in a deep sleep, that doesn't seem right. But they're in a deep sleep. They're not consciously expecting or hoping for anything in the future. So it's a little bit unclear that this is a good objection to premise 1. Premise 2 was that if abortion is if fetuses have valuable futures, then it's prima facie wrong to kill them. And the objection that Nobis Nobis, our video guy, floats here is that, well, maybe the argument proves too much. Maybe if this argument goes through, it also means that contraception is wrong, because can an egg and sperm combination have a valuable future that could become someone? Any argument that would prove contraception is wrong, the idea here, there's got to be something wrong with it. So maybe just because something has a valuable future, it doesn't mean it's prima facie wrong to kill it. Because suppose you're using contraception, and so what about that child that would have been born? Aren't you depriving it of the valuable future? If so, then this argument proves too much, because pretty much everyone agrees that there's nothing morally wrong with contraception. Okay, so I'll say just a word about that. I think Marquis actually has a good reply to this objection, and the idea is that when you have a fetus, you already have a being there, it's an individual. But when you have a sperm and an egg, you really have nothing there that's going to continue to exist in the future. Think about remember our fission and fusion cases when we were talking about the metaphysics of death? When a sperm and egg combine, the original sperm and the original egg, it seems like they're no longer there, and now a new being exists. A zygote or a conceptus, and that's the thing, that's the individual. So it seems like you're not depriving an existing individual of a future. There's a difference between depriving an existing individual of a future, which is wrong, from preventing new futures, which Marquis's argument says nothing is wrong with that. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. There is a philosopher, Judith Jarvis Thomson, who I'd like to discuss for the rest of this video. She is retired from MIT, fantastic American moral philosopher and metaphysician, lots of other stuff. She wrote a very famous paper called A Defense of Abortion, published in 1971, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the ideas and themes in that paper as I finish up this presentation. I'm not going to dwell on this. Here's a standard anti-abortion argument, especially, by the way, she was writing this at the time where abortion was heavily restricted by state law. It was a couple of years before the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision. She was very concerned with the public policy and legal status of abortion, as well as its moral status. So a lot of pro-lifers argue that a fetus is a person and people have right to life, so the fetus has a right to life, and then they think, okay, the rest of it is easy peasy. If the fetus has a right to life, abortion is wrong. And a large part of Thomson's paper is saying, wait a minute, that's way too fast. We shouldn't believe that if a fetus has a right to life, then abortion is wrong. Judith Jarvis Thomson, she also denies that a fetus is a person, at least from the moment of conception. But for the sake of the argument, she's going to accept that a fetus is a person. And her strategy here is to say, well, let's assume that the fetus is a person. Let's give the fetus a full-blown right to life. Does the wrongness of abortion follow? And she has a lot of interesting lines of thought for the answer that the idea is no. We can't so easily conclude that abortion is wrong. Okay, so here's a little passage from her paper. It's sort of a thought experiment. It's a little crazy, but I'm going to read it. Let me ask you to imagine us. Let me ask you to imagine this. She's asking us to imagine this. You wake up in the morning and find yourself back to back in bed with an unconscious violinist. This has happened to you, right? Ha! A famous unconscious violinist. He has been found to have a fatal kidney ailment, and the Society of Music Lovers has canvassed all the available medical records and found that you alone have the right blood type to help. They have therefore kidnapped you, the Society, and last night the violinist's circulatory system was plugged into yours, so that your kidneys can be used to extract poisons from his blood as well as your own. The director of the hospital now tells you, look, we're sorry the Society of Music Lovers did this to you. We would never have permitted it if we had known. But still they did it, and the violinist now is plugged into you. To unplug you would be to kill him. But never mind, it's only for 9 months. By then he'll have recovered from his ailment and can safely be unplugged from you. Okay, I'm going to go on, but I urge you to reflect on this if you haven't done so already. Okay. According to Thomson, this example, this thought experiment shows that it can be morally right to kill an individual who is relying on your body to survive, even if that individual has a right to life. Okay. So in other words, the famous violinist here is innocent. He didn't kidnap you. And he's a full-blown adult with a right to life. But unplugging, saying no way, doctor, unplugging him would be to kill him, but it would not be morally wrong. So it can be morally right to kill an individual who's relying on your body to survive, even if that individual, like the famous violinist, has a right to life. Almost everyone shares the intuition, pretty strong, clear moral intuition, that even if it would be psychologically difficult, it's still not morally wrong for you to unplug yourself in this situation, even knowing that that's going to cause the death of the violinist. Okay, so by analogy, this example at least shows that abortion is morally permissible, at least in cases of pregnancy due to rape. And I'll say a little bit more about that. This example suggests sort of an argument from analogy for the permissibility of abortion. It's morally permissible for you to unplug yourself from the violinist. Again, extremely widely shared, strong, clear intuition. If you don't agree, then okay, that's fine, but almost everyone has this strong, clear intuition that premise 1 is correct. And unplugging from the violinist is morally on a par with a woman's having an abortion. Well, it's a 9-month commitment in both cases. Unplugging from the violinist kills him. Having an abortion kills the fetus. Staying hooked up to the violinist is a significant burden. Carrying the fetus to term if you're a pregnant woman is a significant burden. It seems like these cases are on a par, morally on a par. There's no morally relevant difference between them, and she built the case of the famous violinist to be like that, of course. So, by analogy, it's morally permissible for a woman to have an abortion. This is maybe not a deductively valid argument, but it's a strong argument from analogy. If you're going to treat the violinist case as a permissible killing, then the idea is you should treat abortion as a permissible killing. Okay. It's a pretty persuasive argument, actually. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with it, but now, in the famous violinist example, unplugging the violinist seems to be morally on a par with abortion only in cases where the pregnancy is due to rape. In other words, you were kidnapped. In the violinist example, the fact that you were faced with this situation, stay or unplug, resulted not from voluntary activity on your part. Only in pregnancy due to rape is that the case. So accordingly, the argument that I just displayed on the last slide, that might not be convincing when it comes to such cases, pregnancy due to rape, but not for other, hopefully more typical cases when the pregnancy results from voluntary sexual intercourse. Okay. Still, at the time, there were severe restrictive state laws, I think, that legally prohibited abortion even in the case of pregnancy due to rape. So it's kind of, at least in context, an important argument. Thomson's article suggests another argument, and I'm going to finish up by having us think about this. Okay, the no rights to the woman's body argument. So just very quickly, in the reading, this is sort of section 5, and I'm going to sort of build on... I'm not talking about this one, by the way. Just what's going on right here. I'm gonna say a lot more than he did on fetuses do not have a right to the woman's body. Okay. Okay. So here's the idea. I'll try to talk you through this. A fetus does not have a right to the use of the pregnant woman's body. In that famous violinist case, the violinist did not have a right to use your body, to use your kidneys, right? You didn't give him you didn't consent to that. But Thomson's idea here is a woman who's having intercourse using contraception, and there's a contraception failure. Well, she did not consent to a fetus having the right to use her womb. Okay, and the idea is a thing has a right to use your body only if you sort of consent, only if you give them that right by an agreement. And the idea is, in the absence of that, a fetus simply does not have a right to the woman's body or to the use of the woman's body. Okay, if that's the case, so premise 2 says, if premise 1 is true, if the fetus does not have this right, then abortion is not unjust. What does that mean? Well, that means, that is, it does not violate the fetus's right to life, even if we assume the fetus has a right to life. So the idea here is the right to life is the right not to be killed in an unjust manner. And if a fetus does not have a right to use your body, then killing the fetus is not unjust. It's not violating its right to life. Just as unplugging the violinist is not violating his right to life, even if he has one, he does have one. Similarly, since the fetus does not have a right to the woman's body, depriving it of the use of your body is not unjust. It doesn't violate the fetus's right to life because it has no right to be using your body in the first place. Okay. So if premises 1 and 2 are true, then we get the conclusion that abortion is not unjust in this sense. And if abortion is not unjust and a full-term pregnancy is a significant burden, then abortion is not wrong. Okay. So the idea behind premise 3 is that if abortion is not unjust, then killing the fetus does not violate any of its rights, even if it has rights. Okay, but still, maybe an action could be wrong, even if it doesn't violate any rights. If it would be like a good Samaritan kind of action, doing a favor for a person when it's going to be small cost to you. Okay, but if full-term pregnancy is not a small cost, if it's a significant burden, and abortion is not unjust, then we get the conclusion that abortion is not wrong. Okay, so it's not a rights violation, and it would be a significant burden, right, to kind of keep the fetus alive using your body. Then it's not wrong to abort it. And in fact, full-term pregnancy is a significant burden. I'm not even gonna, 9 months of using your body, letting your body be used by another being. Women who get joy of this and want to carry the baby to term, it could be a blessing as well. But it's a significant burden. The end months have a lot of physical compromises. There's risks, a lot of risks. It's a significant burden. So we have here a valid argument for the conclusion, if you put 3 and 4 together, that abortion is not wrong. And not wrong here is not just prima facie not wrong, but not wrong, just plain wrong. Okay, so we have here a pretty interesting line of argument that abortion is not wrong. By the way, even if the fetus does have a valuable future in store, and maybe even if it is prima facie wrong to kill it. Okay, so we have here the building blocks of how someone like Judith Thomson would respond to Don Marquis's earlier argument, the valuable futures argument concerning abortion. So I really do hope that you'll think a little bit about these arguments, the relevant issues, and kind of the debate between what is often called the pro-life and the pro-choice side. So, in brief conclusion, especially for my spring 2020 life and death students, the final exam in this class is going to have you choose any 4 out of 5 essay-style questions, similar to the midterm that you kind of sat there and took before spring break. And one of the questions I am going to put on this topic, the morality of abortion, and in that question I'm going to focus on the 2 arguments, the 2 biggies from this video, the valuable futures argument as presented earlier, and the no rights to the woman's body argument as presented just a couple of minutes ago. I hope everyone is well. Signing off.